Okay, so sorry about that. Let's continue. So, government employees, even though they can form associations, they cannot go on strike. So, it's when they form associations, it's not for collective bargaining. So, magkaiba. Diba? Magkaiba. Yes, they can organize because you cannot deny even government workers the right to organize, diba? Kasi yung right to organize naman hindi lang sa pag-uunyon, kundi kahit na yung pag-form lang ng mga associations, yung mga club nyo, yung mga, yan, when you form religious associations, that's also part of the right to organize. But, uh, for, specifically, for unionization, hindi yon yung na-exercise ng government workers. Okay? So, yes, they may form unions, or well, technically associations, but only for mutual aid and not for collective bargaining. Okay? But, no, take note of our government-owned and controlled corporations. Okay? Because these are a different matter altogether. If they were incorporated under the corporation code, then yes, they can unionize. But those with original charter and covered by civil service rules, then they cannot. So they can form this employees association. For instance, at the Office of the Ombudsman, we have the Ombudsman Employees Association, but technically it is not a union. Okay, and they cannot negotiate with us management for better terms and conditions of employment because number one, our salary is based on the salary standardization law. Our leaves and other benefits are based again on other laws, the laws applicable to us, not just civil service laws and rules, but also the other general laws giving us this benefits, di ba? Last time sa labor standards, pinag-usapan natin yung mga social legislation such as the Solo Parent Act, such as the Vowsy Law, such as the Paternity Act or Paternity Law, Maternity Leave Law. So, all these things applicable din naman sa government. We also enjoy that. So, batas pa rin ang basihan. Hindi dahil we negotiated with our employers. You cannot negotiate with the state which employs the government. Okay? Now, cooperatives. So, cooperatives cannot unionize. Obviously, because in a cooperative setting, diba, under the cooperative law, the members of a cooperative are also owners of the entity, okay, of the business entity that they operate. So, you cannot unionize against yourself. Then, the employees of international organizations or specialized agencies which are registered with the United Nations and which enjoy diplomatic community, they also cannot do that. Obviously, again, that right is not granted to them. Okay? Now, what about aliens? Okay? With valid working permits. Remember, we issue the so-called Alien Employment Permit or the AEP. So, pwede naman, di ba? Hindi naman ang nagtatrabaho lang sa Pilipinas ay mga Filipino. Meron din namang mga expatriates. Okay? And ano lang ba ang issue natin doon? Pati yung mga trabaho na para na sa ating mga kababayan napunta pa sa mga foreigners. But for some industries, we have expatriates, di ba? Yung mga supervisors ng mga call centers, the chef in some high-class hotels and restaurants, they can be aliens, di ba? Registered aliens, but they have to have their work permit. Okay? Now, they can only unionize if in their country of origin, Filipinos are also allowed to exercise the right to self-organization. So, kailangan meron tayong reciprocity. Okay? Pag walang reciprocity, wala, hindi uubra. Okay? So, yun yung ating dapat tandaan. Saan? Sa kung sino ang pwede at hindi. Okay? So, number one, lahat ginagrant ng right to self-organization and to unionize, but only insofar as what? Only so far as you want to exercise it, because the right to form or to join includes the right not to form or not to join, following Victoriano versus Elizalde Rope Workers Union. Then, there are also certain classes of employees who may not unionize, such as government workers, managerial employees in the private sector. The supervisory, they can organize but they cannot join the rank and file union. Confidential employees, by using or under the doctrine of necessary implication, they may not also form union. Cooperatives may not also form a union. Okay? So, take note of that. Kaya kailangan muna, alisin muna natin sila bago natin pag-usapan who may or may not unionize. Okay. And what are the purposes of unionization? Again, for collective bargaining and dealing with employer. Okay? So, why do we need to have these things? Okay, can anyone just unionize, and what is the process? So we need to register first as what? As a labor organization. If not, then magkakaproblema tayo dyan. Kailangan muna magkaroon ka na labor organization. So, in a non-organized establishment, kunwari, ano magiging problema natin? Magpo-form ka pa lang. And to do this, you need to register as a labor organization. So, there's a registration fee. Then, you need to fill out a form, include the names of officers, the addresses, the principal address of the organization. You need to put in the minutes of the organizational meeting. Kailan nyo na-decide na you're going to form a union, and the list of participants. Then, you need to include the annual financial reports if it's already existing, kung meron na i-report. Kung wala naman, okay, di wala. Meron ka lang declaration that there's nothing to report. Then you need to include the constitution as well as the bylaws, no, and the minutes of the adoption and ratification. And later on, for purposes of certification election, you need to include a sworn statement that there's no certified bargaining agent in the employers. Okay? And in case there's an existing CBA, no, there's a sworn statement that the application is filed within the so-called freedom period, or the 60 days of the agreement, so-called freedom period. And the application and all the accompanying documents, attachments, verified under oath by the secretary or treasurer, attested to by the president of the union, and then it is filed with the Bureau of Labor Relations in the Department of Labor and Employment Office nearest the employer, or nearest the plant, or nearest the workstation. Okay. Now, if you want to federate, and that's why, diba, in the cases that you have read in labor standards, some of them were filed for and on behalf of an umbrella organization, diba? Kapisanan ng ganyan. Or madidinig nyo, Migrante International Chapter ganyan. Or Bukluran ng Manggagawang Pilipino, diba? Sa ganyan. So, if it is a federation, then you must show proof of affiliation. Okay? Kasi ang tinatawag natin, if it is affiliated sa federation, we call it a local. The chapter is called a local. So, yun. Kunwari, yung malalaki, diba? Kulusang Mayo 1, may local yan. Affiliate na lang dun sa workplace na yon. Meron ng malaki. Okay? Now, why do we need to register as a labor organization? Okay? Because it is important to acquire a legal personality. Diba? Basic naman sa batas. Kailangan mo i-rehistro. Okay? Kahit na anong laki nung grupo nyo, kung hindi kayo nakarehistro as required by law, then you will not have a legal personality. Okay? And when you have a legal personality, of course, then that is a start to when you would like to represent your members for collective bargaining. Okay? So, hindi pwedeng parang barkadahan lang. Kailangan, meron ka pa rin susundin, diba, na proseso. And this includes the process of registration. And, lahat na yan, diba, through the Bureau of Labor Relations. Doon natin makikita, ano ba requirement, diba, ano ba bagong rules ngayon if you want to register or if we want to federate or anything in relation to our labor organizations. Okay? And when does it acquire that legal personality? The labor organization acquires that legal personality upon issuance of the certificate. By whom? By the BLR or by the DOLE. Okay? Whichever the case may be. Of course, the Bureau of Labor Relations is under the DOLE. Diba? Kaya yun din. So, yung DOLE din mag-i-issue sa inyo. So, may certificate na sila, then it already has legal personality. Okay? Now, but before they can now ask the management, diba, to listen to their pleas, diba, to their request, diba, to bargain, kailangan muna pag-aralan natin ano ba yung tinatawag na bargaining unit. Meaning, sino ba yung ire-represent mo? Mahalaga yan, class. Very important. Pag di mo alam kung sino nire-represent mo, malaki ang problema ng inyong union o labor organization. Now, under the labor code, what is a bargaining unit? It has been defined as a group of employees of a given employer comprised of all or less than all of the entire body of employees, which the collective interests of all the employees, consistent with the equity to the employer, indicate to be the best suited to serve the reciprocal rights and duties of the parties under the collective bargaining provisions of the law. Ang haba-haba. Pero class, if you can, memorize this please, because that is how a bargaining unit is defined. So, hindi, ibig sabihin, kahit na mag-unionize kayo, if you do not represent, no, tama, kung hindi ng appropriate bargaining unit, wala lang din, di ba? Wala, yung hirap nyo, yung efforts nyo, wala din mangyayari. Kasi, hindi pala tama yung nire-represent nyo. Okay? So, how do we know if the constituency of the bargaining unit is appropriate, is correct? Kung meron ka appropriate bargaining unit. So, what we usually use is the so-called community or mutuality of interest test. Okay? Meaning, pareho ba kayo, 'di ba, ng pinagdadaanan, ng hugot, ng gustong mangyari, ng sitwasyon? Ayun, karaniwan iyan. Okay? So, because like any other business, no, most workplaces, iba-iba ang klase ng trabaho, especially in the bigger companies. So, my favorite example is this. So, let's say, there are around 1,000 employees. Tatanggalin mo muna, class, yung mga hindi pwedeng mag-join. That's how you do it. Para siyang pizza. Hahati-hatiin mo, slice mo muna. Alin yung hindi pwede. Before you can determine alin na lang yung bargaining unit ko. So, ang una natin sinabi, yung mga managerial, tanggalin mo. So, 1,000, minusin natin. Gawin natin na ano, tanggalin mo siguro ang management nila, managerial, mga 100. So, ano na lang? 900 na lang. Tanggalin mo yung confidential. And we talked about confidential employees before. So, tanggalin mo sila. Ayun. At tanggalan ulit this time ng 100 na naman. 800 na lang ang natira. And then, yung supervisory, pwede silang mag-unionize, pero nakahiwalay. Tanggalin mo ulit yung 100. So, 700 na lang ang natira. Sila na lang ngayon yung rank and file. Now, matik ba kagad sila na lahat yon? Using the so-called mutuality of interest rule, diba? Okay? Tingnan natin, pare-pareho ba sila ng gustong mangyari o ng hinahangad? Okay? So, tingnan mo, ano yung nature ng kanilang functions. So, as I've said, if it's a big company, and I use this as an example, 1,000 na empleyado, diba? So, medyo malaki yan. Definitely. So, meron doon admin side, meron doon na field personnel, diba? Kung may sales, meron doon sa manufacturing, and so on and so forth. So, if pare-pareho naman din sila, let's say, same working conditions, same things that they would like to ask the government, that they would like to ask the management improve, then most probably there's mutuality in interest. Okay? But okay, if it is shown that there's none, meaning medyo malayo talaga ang mga pangangailangan nila, wala silang mutual interest, then most probably dapat ihiwalay. And that's why in some cases, ang sinasabi is yung nandun sa yung mga field personnel ay iba kesa doon sa mga regular na nandun lang sa on-site. Diba? Yung nasa manufacturing ay posibleng iba, diba? Pwedeng maging separate yun yan kumpara doon sa nandun sa ibang aspect ng business. Okay? So, pwede rin tingnan yung mga casual employees, hindi sila kamuka ng mga regular employees. So, may mga ganon, 'di ba? Tayo na tinitingnan. Okay? So, that is very important whenever we talk about the bargaining unit. Kasi any discussion later on of unionization, we have to go back to whether the bargaining unit is appropriate. Okay? So, the bargaining unit, to be considered as appropriate, it must affect a grouping of employees who have substantial mutual interest in a lot of things, such as wages, hours, working conditions, nature of the employment, etc. Kasi you cannot fight for what you think you should ask the employer to give you more of kung hindi kayo similarly situated. Ganun lang ka practical yung reason, di ba? Mahirap ipaglaban yung magkaiba kayo ng ipinaglalaban. Yung isa pinaglalaban niya yung kanyang 6 days ang kanilang pasok. Pinaglalaban niya dagdagan ng bayad kasi pati Sabado may pasok sila, even though only let's say 6 hours a day. Pero yun nga, meron mga pinaglalaban, kailangan meron silang transportation allowance, etc. Kasi yung grupo nila lives way off the location of the new, let's say, new office. So, nilalaban nila, teka, dapat meron kaming additional kasi hindi naman namin ginusto na mapalayo, diba? Sila ang naglayo nung opisina. So, now we have to spend so much to go there. Yun, so magkaiba na kagad yung kanilang pinaglalaban. So, not necessarily appropriate yung bargaining unit, at least on that level. Okay? So, we need to consider that. Okay? And then, earlier, I mentioned yung nature ng appointment. Ano bang klase? Diba? Ano bang klaseng empleyado ka? Regular, probationary, casual, seasonal. So, that might also affect, diba? Then your needs, your wants, and what you want to collectively bargain for. Diba? Iba yung kalagayan ni regular. Iba yung kalagayan ng mga under a term employment. Iba din yung mga kalagayan ng mga casual. Okay? And since I already touched on that, okay, iyon yung magiging discussion natin. When I come back from my trip, I'm going to discuss with you the types of employment or the classes of employment. Even though during our class in labor standards, we also talked about some of this, diba? What is regular employment, what is term employment. We mentioned some of these while we were discussing the cases. So we touched on these concepts, but we're going to discuss that in full because it will not discussion of unionization as well as collective bargaining will not be complete if we do not discuss the types of employment, diba? Kasi doon natin makikita ano ba ang pagkakaiba ng iba't ibang empleyado. Kasi ang pagkakaiba ng empleyado class sa iisa, diba, na entity, it will depend on a lot of things in the nature of their employment, as what we're going to discuss when we look into the kinds of employment. Then, as nabanggit ko na rin, you may be both regular employees, but one is assigned as a field personnel, the other is assigned in the plant. Okay, so magkaiba din ang ginagawa nyo. Okay? Then, there are other things which impact what you want the employer to help you out with. Okay? And all of this you have to consider when we discuss employment and vis-a-vis collective bargaining. Okay? So for the entirety of the semester, that's what we're going to discuss. collective bargaining. We're going to have this activity in relation to collective bargaining. So you're going to role play, what happens in collective bargaining so that you will understand and apply all the rules in relation to this, diba? Kasi hindi nyo maiintindihan kung hindi ninyo makikita ano ba ang nangyayari, It's not as simple as a workers group, or a group of workers, a union, diba? The representatives of a union going to the office of the manager and saying, we want this and that. That does not happen that way. Okay? There are rules in place. There is such a thing as bargaining in good faith. Okay? And there's also such a thing as being in bad faith when it comes to collective bargaining. And what we should know when we go up to the bargaining table and discuss these things, diba? Hindi siya madali, hindi siya simple, diba? Marami siyang implication legally, okay? And not just legally, but also what do all of this stand for, okay? So hindi lang yan, diba? Lumabas ka at nagrally ka, and then nagulat ka bakit kinabukasan wala ka ng trabaho. So iyan, diba, ang bulk ng pag-aaralan natin sa labor relations. And I am looking forward to seeing most of you again, my former students, as we discuss the second part of labor law, which is labor relations. As usual, my policies are the same. So perfect attendance would merit a +1 in the final grade. I am also very particular with the examination grades, and I do adjust, as you have seen, I do adjust the grades, but the adjustment is made prior to my giving the final grade. So wala nang pakiusapan yan, etc. So I hope that you will do well. For those who had been under me before, you know how it works. Do well, do your best in the exams. I will compute, I will make some adjustments if I think that there's a need to adjust, and that's it. But bottom line, everything will depend on your performance. So thank you, and I'll see you when I come back.